What's up, world? It's Coach Banta again. We're going to talk about week four, workout number three. Now, typically in week four is when most of the St. Louis area has spring break. And so, one of the things that I try to do for my coaches, for my athletes, and for myself is we use this as a down week. Now, when you look at our workouts, you're going, that doesn't look like a down week in terms of workouts. You're probably right, but the thing is that we're only going to go 3 days in this particular week. So what I traditionally do now is I'll either go Monday through Wednesday or Wednesday through Friday. And then they have a big recovery on one of the two weekends. So depending on the season, depending on the meet, we might have the first weekend be a track meet and then not the second weekend. In the past, I used to really like to race my kids into shape. And so we'd have a first weekend and a second weekend because typically your athletes, if you live in an area like I do that's very affluent and pretty wealthy, kids will go on spring break, but they don't always go both weekends. So you can catch a kid in weekend number one and or weekend number two. Since I've had children at home, my own children as a father and being married, we've moved that to one track meet over those two weekends typically. And, we just take whatever we can in that particular spring break practices and all that. Now, the rule is for spring break practices is I actually have my athletes usually fill out a form if they're going to be out of town or if they're going to be in town. And then what days are they going to be there? And that's really invaluable and really important because it's helped us deal with kind of the nonsense of kids just not wanting to show up at practice. I tell them, if I get you guys out at, the movie theater or the mall or, the outlet malls, we're going to have a big problem. And athletes are pretty darn honest, and we usually get most of our kids there, even though it's spring break and even though we live in a fluid area where people go to Florida and Hawaii and the Dominican and do all those types of trips. So typically we have 2 days, then an active recovery day, then a speed power acceleration day or a race modeling day, then a tempo or pre-meet on a Friday, and then we have Saturday where we compete. In this situation that we're in, we're not going to be competing, obviously, because we're on, quarantine and, social distancing and all that kind of stuff. So what I've done here is done 2 workouts, a day off in the middle, and then this will be our third workout of the week for spring break. So I'll actually talk to you guys tomorrow about some other stuff and some other ideas, but it won't be specifically these workouts that you look at. So again, our warm up, we're into our leg series 2, which I showed you some of those leg swings in the very first video that I did. We're in our mid-season power, so you'll notice that those drills are different than the mid-season quick drills, and you'll also notice that there are mini bursts built in there like we've discussed before. Now, for the sprint workout specifically, because we don't have an acceleration day and we don't have a race modeling day kind of set up due to the fact that we don't compete on a Saturday, I'm not doing that second tempo day or a pre-meet day. I've kind of blended these two together. Now, there's no problem with blending some things together if you have a large enough timeline and enough time to get the workouts done. And typically, we allot 2.5 hours to get through everything we do for our workout. Now, when you hear 2.5 hours, that seems rather long, especially when the pushback philosophically with the Feed the Cats is, hey, I get my athletes in and out in 45 minutes. We spend a lot of time warming up, as you could probably tell from the list of work I have there. We spend time in the weight room. We do plyometrics. So we move through things, and we're trying to touch upon, as many of those things as we can that really move the needle specifically for an athlete. So with this, we're going to do some acceleration runs for 40 meters before we do the chunky part of our workout. And instead of having our athletes come out of the blocks, we're going to do a 3-point NFL combine start, which is what we finish off our warm-ups with all the time too. So when you see A runs down here at the bottom, I'm typically having them accelerate out of a 3-point start that looks like a combine start for the NFL for the 40. And then one of the things that we do with that is we practice them responding to a clap or a gun. Typically, it's just a clap, it's easier. And I'll hold them in different rhythms in different time, so that they get used to people who are instructing them slightly differently every time they crouch down into their 3 point stance. And then what we do is we are creating sound discipline, response discipline. The kid jumps off sides, everybody in that kid's group has push ups. And that's a way to cut down on people false starting and doing some of that stuff that tends to happen quite a bit as sprinters. Now we do 6 of these to 40 meters. So that's a lot, and you don't have to do that much. And you can mess with the intervals here. You could do 40, you could do 4 times 40 from a 3 point, you could do 3, you could do 5, whatever. And then same thing with the 350s. As I move through the end of the season, now this is a week 2 of a cycle, of a 10-day cycle, so to speak. So you'll notice that we're doing 350s on a Thursday, where last week we did acceleration and max velocity. And you're like, well, that's different. And that's because we haven't race modeled the 400 through the 350 in a while. So we're coming back to it, just like we would come back to an acceleration workout, a speed power, max velocity workout, whatever it may be. Now, with these, I don't do a lot of reps when it comes to the 350s. You can do 1 if it's real hot and they're kicking butt and taking names. You can do 2. You can do 3. When I'm in my peak phase of the season and I've dialed it back week to week, slicing off about 10 to 5% off of their volume, about 5 weeks out from the state championship. So if you think about that 5 to 10, you're talking about 25 to 50% volume that has been cut by the time they get to the state championship. We don't unload it all at the same time, because athletes don't respond real well when you go from doing stuff to doing nothing. Their biorhythms get messed up. They have a hard time sleeping. They don't feel prepared. The body doesn't respond well. Maybe you peak too soon, whatever it may be. Okay, so we cut 5% to 10% week to week to week. Now, that's not what we're doing here, because we're only in week 4. We still got 2 more months in a week left if we were going to be going through all the way through a traditional state championship if it wasn't for the coronavirus. So with the 350s, just like when we do the 450 race model, we're going all out for the first 60 meters. We're running tall and maintaining on the back straightaway. We're re-accelerating around the 200 mark, from 200 to 300, building around the curve. When we get there, everybody's going to be tired. And if you've done it right, your legs are going to feel like they're disappearing. So we go to the hands, and then we keep our stride quick. Now, when we finish our workout, we're going to do some plyometrics. But in addition to that, we're also going to do some decrescendo running. So we start off with the fastest reps, 1, 2, then 3, 4, get a little slower, and then 5, 6 get slower, and then 6 or 7 and 8 get slower than that. And so we're going to do this and this. So this is power orientated more now, and this becomes our cool down. Now, again, when we're talking about themes, distance runners, this is a tough day. One of the philosophies that I have for my distance athletes too is we want to race down below. So we want to do speed, and you'll notice here I'm combining some speed with some lactate work or lactic work. Okay, so similar thing, right? So the distance runners are doing flying. They're not doing 3-point accelerations, because most of your distance runners don't need to come out of the blocks very often, right? But then we're also following it up with the lactic threshold pace. Now, I like to do short lactic threshold pace runs with my distance kids versus running a lot of like 2,000-meter runs or something like that. Because if they're a distance kid, a 3,200 kid, or whatever, well, what do you do longer than a 3,200? Well, that's kind of crazy, and you can't really you don't necessarily want the athlete on the track for that long either. So I like to use lactic threshold runs in a park, on grass, and switch it up for them. And this is an extended effort. It's not nearly as tough as the Monday workout typically, but it would be the second hardest workout of the week. Now, because we're doing this on a Wednesday, we're going Monday through Wednesday, or we might do it on a Thursday. The same idea applies for your distance runners when they're not in the peak phase. You can throw this on a Thursday and compete on a Saturday. And again, they might still be feeling it, But now that we're in week 4, their body has adjusted. They're not going to be feeling it as much on that Saturday from Thursday as you would traditionally think. Additionally, the other thing you have to remember about this is we are competing, but we're also training to get prepared for when we're going to peak. So when we get to the end of the year, you're probably only going to have one hard key workout a week, and the rest are going to be recovery runs and long runs, and maybe some stuff in the weight room as we maintain that for women more than men, because women get a bigger benefit out of the weight room hormonally than men do. And then again, in the hurdles, you'll see we're doing similar stuff, right? So instead of running 350s, you'll notice I'm running 300s, right? And then I'm running a 150. So guess what? It's similar in the amount of work that we're doing when you combine these groups right here, right? Yet, so even if the kids not like running the 350, well, they're still running a similar type of workout with similar types of recovery. So if you have an athlete that's floating in between these three groups, right? Like they're a long sprinter, they might run the 800, they might run the hurdles, they might run a 400. And again, training in this area allows you to cover quite a few events. Just listen to all those events I just mentioned, right? The 200, the 400, the 800, the 300 hurdles, the 4x4, the 4x8, the 4x2, right? So the athletes have the ability to do all this different types of stuff. Now, granted, my kid that's a 200-meter kid is probably not going to be doing this. But if they can run a good 200 and they can get over the hurdles, well, darn it, let's prepare them. But then also, let's not underload them so much that they can't do these type of workouts when the day might fall where they're not hurdling and they have to do a special or a speed endurance or a race model type of workout. Now, you'll also notice I put upper body only because we're trying to get the legs recovered because this is a tough day. Now, again, traditionally, I don't come back to a day like this, but over spring break, if you're going Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you've got a lot of space in between. You're already unloaded. If you're not competing on one of the 2 weekends, you're unloaded even more. So even though these 3 days are really quality and have some people would consider a large amount of volume, you're doing it because the frequency is not there. You're going 3 out of 7 days as opposed to 5 or 6 out of 7. So that's kind of my philosophy there. So yeah, and then same thing with jumping. You notice again, we'll have some of our extended bounding here, which again matches up with some of this stuff. We'll have our hurdle hopping, which is also extended, and we follow that up with some 150s, and then we also have, acceleration runs and medium approach jumps, and we're jumping a lot. So this again would be a high volume day for your jumpers. So if they're not doing this, or the sprint stuff, they're still kind of a big volume day as well. And again, when we move to the end of the season, we start to slice this stuff away as we move forward to freshen them up. And it becomes mainly just approach runs and some pop ups and things like that just to keep the rhythm underneath them. All right, the quote of the day: opportunity does not knock, it presents itself when you beat down the door. Opportunity does not knock, it presents itself when you beat down the door. Listen, you've probably heard the harder you work, the luckier you are, right? People don't understand opportunity because oftentimes it's working hard and dressed in overalls. The truth of the matter is if you don't put in the work, you don't put in the time and the specific work and the specific time at the right efforts with a plan in place, you're never going to be as good as you can be. And even if this season for us is taken away from us because of the virus and because of how just the world is happening right now, don't you still want to be prepared? Don't you still want to be ready? What if you got summer track? What if you're running cross country? What if you're playing football in the summer, doing some 7-on-7s, and you want to be ready and don't get hurt and you want to blow people's doors off? These workouts, these activities are things that you can do to get yourself ready for whatever comes. Train like the opportunity is going to be there, and when it's not, oh well, then we move on to the next activity, the next sport. That's the mindset you have to have. Beat the door down for the opportunity. Everything I've ever gotten that's been special or exciting or has been neat in my life has come from not waiting for it. It's been, I'm going to go after it. I'm going to go after the head girls job at Parkway Central. I'm going to go after my master's in positive psychology. I'm going to, become the president of my college in the student body. I'm going to go and, have a certain bench press or squat that I wanted to hit. I'm going to be what I think is the best coach that I can possibly be. I'm not going to rest on my laurels. I'm going to constantly try to learn. Those things require your effort to step into it. Coaches can make you great, okay? Or we can make you good, but you're the ones who decide whether or not you're going to be excellent, right? A good coach makes you good, and you have to take ownership to become excellent. All right, guys, I love you. If you got any questions or comments, please put them below. If you want me to talk about anything specific over the next 3 days, please let me know, because this is the 3 workouts of the week that I have on my plan until we get to the next week. So obviously, I'm looking for a little bit of inspiration of what you guys want me to share or talk about or show you, and I'm looking forward to doing that. So please hit me up. Share this video out to other athletes and to other friends. And remember, we've got to be practicing social distancing with this. So if you can't get on a track, then you do this in your neighborhood. You do this on the street. You do these things in your yard. A lot of this can get done. The majority of this work can get done in your neighborhood. And we can be doing these workouts alone, because the reality is when you step on that track, you're alone. You're competing against the 7 to 8 other competitors, or the 19 plus competitors in a 3200 that you got to manage as you're moving around the track. So the better you are at doing these things on your own and stepping up, the better prepared you'll be when you're out there on your own without a training partner and without a coach screaming 5 feet from you. All right, guys, love you. Peace out.